Okay, we might just kick off. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. All right. So to kick things off, as you know that you're all here for the power of influencer marketing. My name is Georgie Cavanagh, and really looking forward to running you through this presentation. It's a huge passion of mine, and something pretty important, especially in the marketing space for today's day. All right, so today what we're going to be covering is an introduction to influencer marketing, some tips and tricks, and also what's next. So what is next after influencer marketing? I know we are talking about that today, but as we know, it's always good to look forward and to be ahead of the game. So a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Georgie Cavanagh. I come from a PR background. So really the last 10 to 15 years I've been in the PR industry, specialising in media relations. I was a travel journalist at News Corp. So I had my own travel column in the Sunday Telegraph or the Sunday Herald Sun, depending which newspaper you read. It was called The Adventures of Georgie and Jess. We Jess were the original travel influencers. So that's why I do know a bit about this space. I then went on to a company called Tribe. So I was the first employee there. If you can see in my images, you might recognise the guy on the left. His name is Jules Lund. He was on Getaway for a number of years and also on radio. He's the founder of Tribe, and I'll take you through why that company is relevant in terms of influencer marketing a bit after these next few slides. And then I have my own brand now called Carlotta & G, which is a French linen bedding brand, an e-commerce business. So now I know myself on one end from being an influencer to then working on an influencer platform to now understanding, I guess, the power of influencer marketing. When I have my own brand, I can really see it being brought to life, which is super powerful, and again, which is why I'm so passionate about this industry. So as mentioned, I was the first employee at Tribe. So for those of you that don't know what Tribe is, it's an influencer platform. So it's not an agency where we have a number of influencers on the books. It is a self-serve platform. So if any of you have got your own brands out there, it is free to use. It's simply you download the app and then you start plugging away. So it's a fast, effective content at speed. So as we know now, content is king, and it's so important in this day and age, but it can also be really expensive. So Jules came up with this platform to allow you to get lots of content and at speed, which is to keep up with the demand. So really it should be an extension of your marketing arm. So what I mean by that is, instead of you, just say as the brand manager, instead of you having 50 coffees with influencers, you can now place the campaign up overnight, and then you'll get influencers celebrating your own brand. So which means if you're the brand manager for Colgate, you might put up a brief, and then overnight, hopefully, you'll see loads of content coming in. So these are influencers that already own Colgate or are already using Colgate. If not, they'll go out and buy it and then submit content. So I'll show you some examples after. This means that you're not going searching for 50 tiny influencers to talk about a $100 post. Likewise, these guys, these influencers, these citizen influencers, and I'll take you through this, what this means later, they're never going to be able to get in touch with you if you're the marketing manager for Colgate to talk about, an $80 post. So that's why it really is a win-win, because it's a tech platform. You have that scalability to get the job faster and to get your content. And also these influencers really feel like your sales team. They should be, as I said, an extension of your marketing arm. So these guys are out there celebrating and talking to people about your brand. And as I said, if they don't already own the product, they'll go out and buy it. And then this is also increasing your sales too, but be really careful of this. It shouldn't be used as a sales tool in that way. A couple of examples to run you through. So one of the first campaigns that we did was with Sony. So the Sony put up a campaign around a new album that was coming out. And overnight they had lots of content, including a nail artist submitted. So she was from Tasmania and she had 1 million followers. So this is super exciting, and Sony were really pumped about this because they were never going to be able to find Tammy, who's the nail artist from Tasmania, who has 1 million followers, but it's such a niche market and you'd never think nail art and music. But she submitted and they approved the post. I think it was $2,000, in fact. And they were so excited because it's a way of finding a new audience. Also, Member Bottle, which is these really cute, skinny bottles, they put up a campaign. And then overnight, they had about 15 pieces of content from influencers who already owned the product, which is great. And they submitted content and the marketing manager approved them the next day, which is really great to see a fast way of getting content. So just a bit more about Tribe, just so you kind of understand. And Tribe is just one platform. There are others. So I'm not saying you just need to use Tribe, but it's good to get a sense of if you are looking to understand influencer marketing more, there are lots of avenues rather than just you having to go and search the influencers yourself. Because we all know a lot of people are time poor. So this is just another way that if you want to delve into the influencer space, this is a good way. So authentic customers, as I said, they should now become an extension of your sales team. So if you have a look, Vegemite put up a campaign, and so they were showcasing the Mighty merch. So they really wanted influencers to buy the Vegemite merchandise, such as the cup of tea, cup of the mug, etc., and just to showcase this. So they had 71 influencers submit content, and we'll take you through some measuring after. But they had an average cost per engagement of 31 cents, which is fantastic. They often say if you've got between 30 cents and 80 cents, this is great. So 31 cents, that's at the lower space, which is really good. Also, their engagement at 4.1.7% is pretty high. They often say if you get over 1.5, that's really good engagement. And if you look at some of this content, it's really great. It's not just still imagery. As you can see in the top right-hand side, an influencer even submitted a video, which is pretty powerful. So now moving on, just to show you that I do understand the power of influence marketing from a brand's perspective. As I mentioned, I've got my own company, and so now having experience with influencer marketing. We've used a variety of influencers for Carlotta and G. We use what's called user-generated content. So this is where we've had lots of sales now, and it's great. Our community really get behind us, and they are constantly, posting videos or photos saying, you know, in bed with Carlotta and G, or just received my new linen, and they're posting and tagging about us, we always make sure that we then go and reshare that content, because it's stuff that we haven't had to do ourselves, and it's really great, authentic customers doing this for us. So we make sure we share that. We also have our own social channels. We've also then been doing lots of collaborations with influencers. And so, for example, if you look at Harper and Harley, so she has over 500,000 followers. So she's from Sydney. She's a fashion lifestyle influencer and really has been there from the start. So it was really interesting doing this campaign with her. We didn't have to pay her. She really wanted to support up-and-coming brands. So she would get a lot of requests for this. And so this is something to really bear in mind. They do get a lot of requests. They will choose these bigger influencers, which brands they want to work with for money, and then they will have a few brands that they love just to support, which is really fantastic. So not only has she done, you know, one campaign for us now, there's been a number, and so we've just had to give her product, because of course we want her to trial it and be really authentic when she's talking to that. So you can kind of see some of the examples that she's done. And from a brand's perspective with influencer marketing, this was a great example, because not only did we get lots of new followers, it was amazing. The moment she posted, our follower rose. I think we got about even 2,000 new followers, which is huge. We also, it's one thing to get new followers, but does that revert in sales? And from this collaboration, it really did. We had sales that day and continued for the next couple of days, and then even still to this day, we often have sales. And I ask them, where did you hear about us? And this is where they say the collaboration with Harper and Harley, which is really good. Another use of content is also behind the scenes from shoots. So we make sure that we use this content, whether it be giving it to influencers or extending influencers to come to our shoots, and takes them behind the scenes shoot content, which is really powerful as well. A few more examples of how we used influencers with Carlotta and G. So last year in particular, we saw a really increase, obviously, number of users on socials because everyone was at home. But people and brands really started experimenting with new forms. So not just still imagery. For example, we did a collaboration with a fitness influencer, so Jackie. She's a Pilates instructor. And so what she did is she took over our brand's Instagram and created a personal Pilates class just for Carlotta and G's audience. So again, it's really, really important from a brand's perspective that you're giving back to your own channels and to your own audience. Otherwise, they will unfollow you, and you're not really giving them anything. So that's why we really wanted to do that, and it worked really well. Another sense, so you don't have to be an influencer. So with your own brand, just using your own channels is influential enough. And so what we did is we came up with a new marketing strategy, which again is around influence and content, called C&G Explores. So this is where we stay at really interesting and unique locations to showcase our linen. So people came on the journey with us. So not only were we posting on our socials, and people could engage, to close the marketing loop, we then ensured we wrote a journal, and this lived on our website. We then, wherever we stayed, we got those brands posting on their channels. Often lots of these accommodation places have big social followings these days because, as we know, we can't really travel that far. So especially those in regional areas are gaining a lot of traction on socials because people wanting to feel like they are there. So those guys would post on their socials. And then where we could, we got a media outlet such as Country Style to showcase the shoot. They ran this on their socials and then would also put it in the magazine. So again, wherever you can, it's not just influencer marketing, it's closing the whole loop and ensuring everyone comes along for the journey and the storytelling. So what is influencer marketing? I really like this image and I like this idea to explain what influencer marketing is, because influencing as a whole has been around ever since Adam said to Eve, "You really must try this apple. It's totes amazing." And this just sums up, this was Adam convincing or influencing Eve about a product, trying the apple. So if you look at it simply like that, it really is just a form of influencing someone. And so I guess you learn in your own style how to influence. And so continuing on, influencer marketing. So sure, we've all heard it before, but it really can be a game changer if you're looking to make authentic connections with your audience. So it really does vary by industry, but for small businesses, partnering with influencers works. So they can help build your audience and engagement on social platforms, but it really is about working with the right ones. So don't just think, I'm going to try influencer marketing and it's going to work. If you haven't done that research into the different influencers, then there might be no point. There's no point having an influencer or having 10 influencers promote your brand if it really is the wrong audiences. So remember, influencers live and breathe Instagram and also other various social media platforms. So they really do know their craft. So it's important that we do trust them as well. They cultivate loyal audiences built on trust and authenticity, which you can leverage as a brand. So if you are working with these influencers, don't try to tell them what to do or don't try to micromanage them too much, because then it's just not going to, sure, it might suit your brand, but it might not suit their audiences. So it's about working together and listening to what they have to say and just trusting that they know their audience and you want your brand to become alive with their audience. So the big question, and it's really the $1 million question, I guess, who is an influencer? So often at Tribe, we used to talk about this, and we obviously still do. So an influencer is a person with the power to affect the purchasing decision of others. This might be done through authority, knowledge, or relationship with their audience. Influencer marketing is a practice of connecting your brand with online influencers who then market your product or services to others, as mentioned. So I put this in just to give you a bit of background on influencers, because a lot of them have a really interesting story, and especially at Tribe, when I really got to learn. I think there's 50,000 influencers on there now, but in the early days, we really would spend time getting to know these influencers. And so it's a bit like if you're in PR or wanting to speak to a journalist in traditional media, it's so important that you know what they write or what football team they go for or what time they like to be called, or do they like an email. It's important, if you're going to work with influencers, you need to know a bit about them and put yourselves in their shoes and understand their story. So this is a great story that I like to share. There's an influencer, she's got nearly 100,000 followers, and her name is Sonali. Her handle is Sugar Trail. So have a look. She was an investment banker, and she's now turned full-time content creator. So all her content is around baking. So if you have a look, She's done lots of work with brands, but it's done in a really subtle, authentic way. Again, still just always following what's true to her around baking. Yeah, as you can see, there's a great example here. She's done a collaboration with Aeroplane, so with jelly, and it really brings that content to life rather than her standing there saying, I use this to make jelly. She's created content with a compelling story. There's also different types of influencers. So don't just think that there has to be fitness influencers, food influencers. There really are different kinds. So have a think about what your brand is and think outside the box. So now there's lots of dog influencers, there's horses, there's fashion or cars. So if you have a look at this dog influencer on the left, she's got over 70,000 followers, and people who just love dogs, or they really feel a part of her story, and the engagement is great. So really, I'm not saying all brands would be suited to animal influencers, but there might be a reason. So it's about thinking outside the box. So what's the difference between influencers? So this is another good question, because it doesn't just come in one box. So when we talk about citizen influencers, we say that they have less than 3,000 followers and are extremely authentic and high, lots of engagement. So we often say, some brands might say, oh, they've only got 3,000 followers, or they've only got 4,000 followers. Why would this be important to my brand? If you put it back to, rather than the online sense, if you take it offline and think about you're standing in front of a crowd of 4,000 people and saying, I drink this red wine, I had it at dinner last night, these are the best parts about it, you're going to be front of mind, and people are going to take you seriously because you're thinking, oh wow, I'm going to check out that red wine next time I have a dinner party. As opposed to a celebrity influencer who maybe has 1 million followers, and you really know that they've probably just been paid to endorse that red wine, and do they really believe it, and do they really actually use it at their dinner party? Micro influencers, so this is where we talk to, they have under 100,000, which means they're still getting lots of eyeballs, but they're also still relatable as they have, as that has their own niche. So a lot of fitness influencers fall into this category. Maybe they're into Pilates, so people are following them because they want to live a healthy lifestyle and learn about that. Or whether they're a food influencer, or maybe they're a mum, and because they've been really authentic, they've built up a following and people love coming on their journey. So they're not a celebrity, they're an everyday person, but they're really relatable. And it's great they still have that large sense and lots of eyeballs. Then we move on to macro influencers. So they have over 100,000 followers. And this is where they almost reached a celebrity status. So this is where they have often less engagement and interactions with their audiences, but they do provide a big reach. So there is a great element of having a mixture. So not saying one's better than the other, but it's about looking about what you're trying to achieve from a marketing perspective. And all of this I can share if anyone's got any questions after. But it's really interesting. We did this, a bit of a survey or a bit of some stats around followers. So we looked at some influencers that have between 3,000 and 10,000 followers. And if you look at their average engagement, that's fantastic. 5.71% is huge. As opposed to, as you work your way down, someone with over 100,000 followers, the average engagement reduces. So it goes to 1.84%, which is what I was talking about just before. So a couple of tips around, sometimes this space is really overwhelming and you might think, gosh, how do I start working with influencers and where do you start? So a bit of kind of easy tips just to start the journey and really look at it like a journey. This whole space is evolving. I've got lots of friends that work at Pinterest, lots of friends at Facebook and Instagram, often at LinkedIn. They're all different beasts and they're all evolving as well. So it's really actually working with influencers. Another good tip would be to make sure you are following those social media platforms on their own socials. So follow Facebook, follow Instagram, follow TikTok, because they will then give you an insight in what they're planning. So then you can stay ahead, just like influencers are staying ahead, and get the inside word on what they're doing to change their platform. But coming back to influencers, often a good way is often their email is in their bio. So, direct message is okay, but think about how many they would get. So if you can get their email address from their Instagram and maybe send them an email, a really short email with an interesting subject line is maybe going to get more cut through than a direct message, seeing they probably have lots of people messaging them on there. And I really wouldn't start with offering free. If you've got a brand that's with a product, don't just email them and say, I can give you this for free, because I can guarantee you it's not just you offering them something for free. It's a whole lot of other brands. So really just have about what they like and how something could fit with them. And don't just go to them and say, oh, I would love to collaborate with you, because, I've got friends at different brands and I can assure you that lots of people, or I've got friends who are influencers, they get so many messages from brands saying, I'd love to collaborate. And I know for a fact with us, we get lots of brands and I offer lots of influencers saying this. And the first thing I'll always go back to them and ask is, please tell me, why do you love linen? Or tell me a bit about our brand, or what's your favorite color linen? Or how did you hear about us? Because often they are just messaging a whole lot of people. So really have a think about what you might want to do with that influencer and why you're working with them, and have a good strategy, because then they'll really appreciate that and get behind it more. So how to find influencers who really fit your brand. So it's really how you attract new users, and it's how you build yourself from the ground up. So this is really important that it's done right. On Instagram alone, there's an estimated of 500,000 influencers. And apps like TikTok are giving their way to a whole new generation. So this is a really interesting stat on, again, the power of influencer marketing, because 63% of 18 to 34-year-olds trust what influencers say about brands more than they do the brand themselves. So if you can give the voice to someone else that your audiences trust, or that their audience trust, then you're going to have a better cut through of them listening to what you're trying to say. So by aligning yourself with someone who matches with your brand identity, then you can tap into a much wider audience. So a couple of the steps that you should think about when you're looking to work with influencers. So consider the size of their following. As we say, it doesn't always mean the larger is better. I can definitely assure you that those citizen influencers, they have a lot of power. To create the ideal influencer persona. So have a think about who is your ideal influencer for your brand, or, and just start mapping out what it is about them. So once you go looking for them, that you can really see, do they tick the boxes? Another good way is to search hashtags, because often you won't know these influencers. So if you're searching hashtags, you'll come across a lot of different content and influencers, and you might just open your eyes. Also, another good tip is using Google alerts to find influencers. So you might search fitness influencers, or travel influencers. And setting these Google alerts will then allow you to get notifications when they might be in the media, or they might post something that's going to be relevant to you. Also, branded content. Have a look at what other influencers are doing and what other brands are doing, and would this be right for you? And also, as mentioned, there's influencer marketing platforms such as Tribe to help you scale a lot faster. All right, so the big question is, working with influencers, really, is it worth it? Well, the stats really do suggest so. And again, all of these I can share with you after, or I can send you a lot more stats if you really do need. But 71% of marketers say that influencer marketing creates better quality leads. And 49% of consumers, they really do rely on influencer recommendations when deciding whether to make a purchase. So when we talk about influencer marketing, you think of yourself as a consumer. There's not just one touch point that you go before making a purchase. You really are, you're reading blogs, you're turning on the TV in the morning to listen to what those guys have. Maybe you're hearing the radio, maybe you're talking to a friend that has a recommendation. Maybe you're opening your Instagram or your Facebook and seeing what people are saying. So, a lot of people will go to up to at least 15 touch points. So it's important that you are covering all those bases. Influencer campaigns focused on branding and engagement. Influencers help brands make authentic connections with their target market. So a couple of techniques to assist growing your own socials. So I know we have talked about a lot in this session the power of influencer marketing, and we have talked to influencers and how important it is about using influencers. But it's almost like if you're trying to get fit yourself and encourage other people to get fit, you can't really talk to that fact if you're not fit yourself. So it's important that your own socials are fit and ready to go, and they are healthy themselves. So what does this mean? It means about making sure all your bios are correct, making sure all your images are great, making sure you're engaging with your own audience, and then so that when you use influencers, that it's a really nice combination. So things like leaning into user-generated content. As I mentioned with Carlotta and G, we're constantly resharing our user-generated content and engaging, because that's powerful that you've actually got your own community wanting to tell other people about your brand. It's important with your own socials to test everything. Don't just assume that because you post something at a certain time that's when you should do it every time. Really test different times. Just test everything. You've got the data now in your Instagram or Facebook, in your own platforms, to be able to see if it's working or not. Try hashtags. So what's that? I mean, you can search different hashtags to see which ones are better for you to use. Don't just keep it generic, like saying beauty. If it's beauty brand, really think if it's a face mask, try an interesting hashtag that might not have, you thought of before, but they've got lots of engagement. Experiment with different mediums. So with this, I mean, don't just take still imagery. Really try video content. We've seen lots of data that video really is pretty powerful. Also try live. Definitely during COVID, we did Instagram lives with different influencers. So with our brand, it was really great because we could collaborate with different influencers and do Instagram live, and both channels we were promoting that we were doing an Instagram live, and this engagement was really, really pleasing to see, and we saw a big number of growth throughout this time. Also create different platform-specific content. So with this, I mean, doesn't mean if you post something on Instagram that it's going to suit to Facebook, for example, or to LinkedIn. Really look at the different channels that you're promoting. And then also make your profile shine. This is like your CV. So make sure it's always switched on, because at any time, someone could be looking at it. As I said, lean into user-generated content. So this is a good example of a bakery. You can see that they have reshared an influencer who posted about their brand. It's really great content. So use it. It just saves you from having to go and create more content. As I mentioned, really test everything. So not just on timings. You might, look for typos or try different headlines. Try timing, so whether you post 1 or 2 a day. Really test this as you go forward. As I mentioned, hashtags. You've got all that data there, so really use it and see what other influencers and other brands are doing in that space too. As mentioned, really experiment with different sorts of mediums. So we really are in the age of short-term videos. So give that a go. As you can see, again, I mentioned really follow what the social platforms are doing, because they're really guiding the way influencers will then work as well. So as you know, Instagram recently launched Reels. So have a play around with that. That really is their answer to TikTok. And then have a play with Instagram stories, because there's so many features available there that you don't need lots of other plug-in apps. Just have a go at Instagram stories and you'll be able to see what engagement you can get from there. As mentioned, really try different content for the different platforms. So, if Facebook is going to be different to what Instagram likes. The same goes for if you're creating content with influencers. What works on Instagram, the content there, is not going to be the same as what you would use for a full-page print ad in a magazine. So really, if you try to squeeze what you've just say done for a magazine ad onto socials, it's not going to work. So now that's why content really is king, and it's important that we're just constantly getting fresh content and all different types of content to work with all different platforms and audiences. As mentioned, make your profile shine. So after this, I want you to all go and look at your own social media bios, and don't ever let them get stale and think, oh, I've set it out and that's how it's got to be. Keep changing it. We've really got lots of data, even from our own brand, to show that if you're constantly updating this and trying new techniques or different links, then it really will show. Does emojis work in your bio? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Also, as you know, once you get to 10,000 followers, you can start doing swipe up links. So again, this is pretty powerful to take your consumers straight to the messaging. All right, so a few tips as well as on engaging in social media. So obviously lots of influencers know this, but it's really important that you know it as well. There's a couple of buzzwords at the moment, such as algorithm and engagement. So they really do go hand in hand. So good engagement rates will help boost the algorithm success. So basically what I mean with that is, don't just, if you're working with influencers and they post, don't just think you don't have to get involved. The more that you can really engage with them, but also on your own socials, writing back to comments, engaging with other influencers, then the algorithm is going to note that, because really putting in the effort, and it's going to show up within socials. So a few ways of how you can engage on social media. So this is really a good example, and I'm sure you would have seen it more and more now. Ask questions. So don't just put up posts and, that aren't engaging, that might just put a statement. Maybe ask a question. So for example, this gin company was great because they often run, what do you prefer, pink gin or normal gin? And so from a brand, this can be all the research that someone needs to do before deciding if you're going to go ahead with a certain product or range. Maybe try a few of these polls, because it's important to, test who your consumers are going to be or who your customers are going to be first. Because if you're not suiting it to who they want, then there's no point in really doing it. So you might think you know your brand better than anyone. Yes, you do, but you want your consumers engaging with you as well, and it means they're going to buy your product. So really ask them, put it to them. So as I said, there's lots of different tools on Instagram that you can use and get audiences insights to determine, is it the right product? Is it the right content that they want to see? And go from there. Some other tips which might help the algorithm is, remember posting, like it used to be basic, and we used to think, if you post at the right time and you use the right hashtags, then this will be enough to nail the algorithm. Well, definitely now marketers and people have switched on, so it's not as easy as that. But don't worry, you now have such great data to be able to use in your favour. So definitely take a look at Instagram, and the other platforms all have this data. As you can see to the right in Instagram, you can search, from last year, the last 7 days to a certain Monday, and what was the different reach on all the different content that ran. So if you're working with influencers, really ask for this data. If I was to ever work with influencers, I would never just assume who their audience is or what kind of reach they get. I'd always ask them to show me that proof. And, there's different ways to work out post reach or potential reach. There's all of this kind of data that you really need to be looking into before making any decisions about that. Another great thing is looking at audience growth rate. So, for example, with this, to measure it, you start by choosing the select period of days or months that you wish to analyse. So really look at, you might look at it every 7 days, and you calculate how many followers you've gained over that period, and then you divide your new followers by the total followers. So, for example, if you wanted to measure the audience rate between January and July, you'd go 1st of Jan, just say you had 10,000 followers, and then on July 1st, you had 15,000 followers. So with this, you obviously gained 5,000. The audience growth rate would be 33%. So if you can keep managing this data, then you will be really able to analyse, are you doing things that your audience like, and which means you're growing followers. Different measurements as well is your social share of voice. So again, all of this data might be a bit boring, but you really do need to analyse this stuff, because otherwise you're just posting or working with influencers and just hoping that it works. But if you're not analysing the data, then you really don't know. Also, things like tracking keywords and ensuring you're using them on your own social posts. So, what are the keywords in your industry or within your brand that you should be using on social to make sure that people are engaging with it. We also talk about return on investment, so ROI. It is really hard in socials to put a figure to this But as I said, if you're not on there, then that's one less touch point that someone's going to be able to tell, should I buy that brand? So you really, you need to be giving it a go. But generally, we talk to a 5-to-1 ratio. So to get this, so ad spend to what you're getting from coming back. So what you do is divide the revenue generated by social media efforts by all your known social expenses. So, I mean, take this with a pinch of salt, but if you work towards 5-to-1, if you're getting this, then that's a pretty good start. I just added this slide in there because as I was thinking about it, and thinking about the power of influencers, I just think the more influencers really need to be authentic, because if you're not working with authentic influencers, then it's really going to shine or show through, and there's just no point. So, for example, they shouldn't just be paid to promote a brand that they don't already use as a general consumer. So if you take for this example, and I'm sure a lot of you would have seen it, got lots of media exposure, but Ellen was, the host at the Oscars, and she did a tweet. So Samsung was a sponsor, and she did a tweet. So it was meant to be, all around Samsung phones and promoting that. But it was actually really clear that she had an iPhone, because if you see the one on the right, it says Twitter from iPhone when she's there on behalf of Samsung. So it just shows that if you're not authentic, it's going to come up pretty, there's no point working with those influencers that aren't authentic. So really look at that. Another, because this industry is so fast-paced and moving all the time, people can get a bit overwhelmed, and there's just so much happening always. So I know we're talking about the power of influencer marketing, but as mentioned, you should always be reading up and thinking what is next, because soon it will change. And if you're not ahead of the curve, then it just is going to become a lot more expensive for you as well. So again, at Tribe, we used to always, maybe about 5 years ago, when we'd have meetings, trying to explain to people the power of citizen influencers. At that stage, it was really early, and people didn't get it. They would say, why would I want someone with 5,000 followers promoting my brand? I really want someone with 1 million followers because the reach is there. But we would explain to them saying, you could do a campaign for $5,000 and you're having the same amount of reach, but you are having maybe 30 conversations, so 30 influencers with 5,000 followers, all promoting your brand, as opposed to one influencer with 1 million followers. So that's just going to one audience. So think about it, that's one post going to one audience with 1 million followers, and you've paid $5,000. Or you could spread that conversation among 30 citizen influencers. So you're getting 30 pieces of content, but also you're getting 30 different audiences. So that's exposing your brand to 30 lots of influencer audiences. So like I said, in the early days of citizen influencers, those brands that got on board, it was really effective and cost effective. Obviously now, as it's taken off a bit more, it's become more of the norm and a bit more expensive. So that's why it's important to stay ahead of the curve of what's next after influencer marketing. Soon it will come down to, it doesn't matter if you have 2 followers or you've got 500,000 followers, because it really will come down to how you create content. With that, I mean, so now brands are looking into content rights from influencers. So what that means is, rather than influencers posting, if you're working with an influencer, you maybe don't want that influencer's audience now. You just want that influencer's content because they can take an amazing photo, but then you're going to buy the rights to that image. So rather than working with an advertising agency, maybe spending $100,000 for 4 images, you could now, for the fraction of the cost, for $1,000, for maybe even less, you could own the rights to these amazing images that are still billboard quality. So you could take that image and still put it on the side of a billboard, or you could put it in a print ad, or you could just use it on your own socials and put Facebook and Instagram advertising behind it. So that's really interesting now to look at, considering buying the rights to some of these content that the influencers have done. So it's really good to start with influencer marketing, and so maybe test some collaborations with them and see what works. Because rather than you just choosing an image and hoping that if you put some paid spend behind that image, it's going to create lots of engagement and you're going to get lots of reach from that, it's better that you do the testing. As I always say, test. Do that testing with influencers and to their audiences and get the data from that, and then you'll know which posts work before you start doing Facebook and Instagram advertising. As you can see here, just not to always talk about Tribe, but they've got now what's called a content platform as well. So Huggies put a content campaign in. So within 9 hours, they had over 300 photos, which were, again, all billboard qualities from influencers. And they could just choose which image that they wanted to buy and then go ahead with their marketing strategy and use that content as they needed. Again, what is next after influencer marketing? So another really good example I wanted to share here is around Bacardi. So with the drink, with the alcohol, they ran a content campaign. Well, first of all, they did an influencer campaign where they had all influencers promoting, their mojito moment. So again, using a great hashtag that becomes really scalable and talkable within socials, and everyone wanting to share their hashtag mojito moment. So once they did the influencer campaign, it really got a swell of people talking. Then to extend that further, and again, we'll talk about touch points. You might have seen that on socials. Then if you're at the train station or you're walking down a street and you see on a billboard, as you can see in this example, that was all billboard quality content. So then they bought the rights to a lot of this influencer content and put this on billboards in real time over the summer. And they kept changing this content. So you're not, if you're walking down the street one day and then a week later, so you're not just seeing the same content and getting bored with it. They kept changing it, and they easily could. So they worked with 60 influencers to share their mojito moment. And it really, the more that you can create that social buzz, then again, like I said, this comes back to helping with the algorithm and just keeping you top of mind. So that is something to remember as well. Again, it's really, really interesting to know when we talk about influence marketing, it all comes down to the phone. So if you look at phone companies these days, now when they're promoting their brand, they don't talk about offers and deals. All they're talking about is the phone's camera, because influencer marketing is so powerful. But with your phone now, and especially the likes of the iPhone or the latest Android, the cameras are so good. You've got all the little features within these camera that an ad agency would. So that's why these influencers are using these phones to create this great content. And you, as a brand yourself or your own brand, it's important to, yes, work with influencers, to work with them with this content, but don't be afraid yourself with your own brand to become influential, and testing using these camera features, because it's all in your phone now. You don't need to go to an ad agency to have influence. So it's about testing and learning and having it a go. All right. Well, I have talked a long time. Hopefully I just gave you a good snapshot. I'm going to just bring you back. Where are we? I'm just going to bring you back now so I can see in the chat section if anyone's got any questions. Hopefully that gave you a bit of a holistic view, whether that's from an influencer themselves or from an influencer platform, or then from a brand's perspective on using influencers. It really, it's a cross-section of how the whole marketing strategy comes to life. So if anyone's got any questions, or if you don't, feel free to reach out after. Like I said, you can obviously find me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Another good thing to remember is influencer marketing. Yes, it's very visual, and that's Instagram and Facebook and TikTok as such. But don't forget LinkedIn. So LinkedIn might not be visual, but it's very powerful from a trades perspective or just from an industry corporate perspective. So you can be an expert leader in that. Okay, we've just got a question. Is it worth to do Facebook paid advertising? Great question. Yes, I really do think it is. Make sure you've got all your ducks in a row. So don't just start with Facebook advertising first, because if your own socials or your own website is not ready, then you're going to be spending this money, and you're going to be getting these customers. You've got one shot at it. If they're going to come to your website and then you're not ready, you're really going to lose them. So give Facebook a go, but then there's other things. What we're doing with Carlotta and G, we're trying Google shopping ads now. So, and that's starting to work really well. So it's really important just to test what works and start with small budgets, because then you can see, is that content working? If not, you might have to change it. My handle is Georgie Cavanagh. That's CAVANAGH. Hit me up, because I love talking about this, and a lot of people were so overwhelmed from it. But like I said, it's such a moving beast. If you wanted to have a look at my linen brand, just to see what we're doing as well, it's Carlotta and G. You might be able to see some different tactics that we're doing there. Also, another thing within Instagram advertising as well, talk to them before you do it. Have a chat to them. There's so many different people within these platforms and so many case studies and examples that you're not out there alone. So if it's not working, give it a rest and try something else. But I think it's about being consistent as well. So especially with your own social channels, don't just think you posted once and that's it for the next 2 months. It's like if you're talking to a friend and then you stop talking to them for 6 months, those everyday smaller moments are what makes socials more authentic, rather than the wow factor 6 months later. People really love that behind the scenes conversation. So just remember that. You might not think it's relevant, but people really do engage with that those smaller moments as well. All right. If anyone's got any more questions, like I said, feel free to hit me up. I can loop you in, anyone at Tribe as well. But apart from that, yeah, I hope you got something out of it. It's a great industry, and also for a lot of the time it's free. It's a free marketing channel. So just give it a go and get your word out there. And you've really got nothing to lose. So I want you all on socials now, and you know, expanding your marketing mix with influencers. So don't be scared of it, because there's a big variety out there. Don't just think celebrity influencers where it's at. Maybe your local barista. You never know. They could have 10,000 followers and you didn't know. So start talking to people. Just bring it into that everyday conversation. All right, I might leave it there. Yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully, if you fill out the survey, if you want me to come back again and kind of narrow down on any other certain topics or expand on something a bit further, very happy. Just let the guys know and can do that. All right, thanks again, guys. Bye. Have a great day.